Hey guys, welcome back to Mind Your Conversions podcast. And I have a new guest, awesome Haley Carpenter, and she is joining us from Austin. Yeah, Haley. So we run this podcast at Fiber AI because very less number of people are actually talking about conversion rate optimization, and we are like, hey, people should talk about it considering how CACs are going up right now. And so at Fiber AI, we're trying to disrupt this whole ecosystem of CRO, especially around how manual the process has been, how CROs want to do a lot more experiments, and how they can use AI to do it. So that's what we do. But I want to like hear more from you, Haley. So right off the bat, talk to me about your journey. I think you're kind of like a CRO ninja. You've been with like the best brands out there, and now you have your own startup. Talk to me about your journey. How did you end up in this field, and why does this excite you?
Yeah, that's very kind of you to say. You're hyping me up. I got into this field on accident, actually. So it started when I was at the end of my college career. A couple of months before I graduated, wanted to get a part-time job and then hopefully roll that into some type of full-time job after I graduated. So I was looking for part-time gigs, found an executive admin assistant job at an agency in the college town that I was at. And it was a digital marketing agency, primarily a PPC agency. I'd never heard of the industry. I had never heard of PPC. Like I went into the interview, like literally after just like Googling terms and like doing research online, trying to be able to be, competent enough to get through the interview. So I got that job and then graduated, and I applied to be a CRO coordinator. I'd never heard of CRO before I joined this agency. I had, it wasn't like a dream since I was 5 years old. So long story short, I started at a PPC agency. I truly started at the bottom down as like as low as you could get on the ladder, and worked my way up from there over the years and didn't skip any steps. So I went from coordinator to CRO manager. And then I wanted to not only do just landing page optimization for PPC, because that's what that agency needed, but I wanted to do full funnel optimization. So then at that point, that's when I moved to CXL agency, which is now Speero, and was a strategist there, and then ultimately became a senior strategist. And then that was really the big turning point in my career, where then I moved to Optimizely because I wanted not just agency experience and not just like mid-sized business experience, but I wanted to work at a really large enterprise on the SaaS side at a testing tool. So got into Optimizely, was a strategy consultant there, ultimately managed the North American team of strategists at Optimizely to help onboard clients. It's cool. And then at that point, I will say I did always know when I got into the industry from day one that I wanted to do it for myself and work for myself someday. So then I ultimately, at the end of that Optimizely journey, was like, okay, it's time. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go on my own. And that's how I have Chirpy now, which started about 2.5 years ago. So I can relate to your company and being a startup. And I love it. And I got into CRO and still love it because there's a mix of the creative side and the analytics side, which I think a lot of people say and relate to. And then, I never, before getting into this, wanted to work with clients. I never wanted to have a client-facing role, but when I took it as a challenge that I wanted to tackle, and I wanted to learn how to do it and be confident and figure that out. So, I've done that, and now I have Chirpy, where we do DTC, e-commerce, CRO, and I agree with you in that a lot of people don't even know about CRO. When I talk to people, not online, but in the real world, like at conferences and things, like honestly, a lot of people, you say CRO and they think that means Chief Revenue Officer only. So I get where you're coming from.
Got it. No, this is exactly like this is one of my problem as well. If I am traveling to like Chicago and being in a conference, people just consider, hey, you are creating AI chief revenue officer. And like, nope, I am solving for conversion rate optimization. And it's been a pain. Like, we've been trying to make it work with like conversion rate optimization, conversion and revenue optimization. And we're trying to so that people understand it. It's hard for people to sometimes grasp if they're not coming from marketing, right? Like marketers do know it, but when they're not from marketing for a general public, it just becomes a bit tough.
Honestly, a lot of marketers don't even know about it, or they've heard about it. And I think that even if people have heard about it, even people that are maybe to some extent more familiar with it, maybe they've even done a little bit of it, there's still a huge misconception about what it is and what it encompasses. So I think it gets sold really short, and like it's not just optimizing conversion rates and making one copy change in an A/B test. And
Yeah.
the name, like kind of you're alluding to, I think name really does it a disservice as far as speaking appropriately to what it is.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, if I could just rename it this, or maybe I could market it as this. The unfortunate part is that it has been known as conversion rate optimization for so long.
Yeah.
And like, I think we would all collectively have to agree on a new name and try and promote it as such. And the industry is, I think, small enough in a good way that, a lot of us know each other and help each other out. But anyways, all of that to say, I align with what you're saying.
No, makes sense. And Haley, I know, like, I know you guys are in the website revamp stage right now. I was just talking to like ChatGPT and Perplexity and figuring out, hey, what Chirpy does, and like it talks about how you focus on DTC, e-com brands for conversion optimization. Any reason why you like narrowed down to that particular vertical?
Yes. So when I started Chirpy, I did not choose a niche. That was intentional. I did not want to narrow down. And I have said that my entire career about the business, like I just said when I opened it, but also as an individual practitioner. Like I never wanted to be just a SaaS practitioner or just an e-com, because I think there are a lot of advantages to not doing that. And from a business perspective, with Chirpy, CRO is already quite niche.
Mhm.
So to niche down on that and then even double or triple niche, like I was like that's just so specific.
Yeah.
But I knew when I made that choice for the business, which is different than making that as a choice as an individual practitioner. Like I've always heard, you can't be everything for everyone. That's not an effective business strategy, which I also understand and see the advantages of. But I broke I broke that rule, like intentionally. And that I don't think was working. So I had a mentor suggest, hey, you really should niche down. And I think personally, I have a passion more for e-commerce and then D2C specifically than SaaS.
Mhm.
So I chose it for that reason, one, but two, I also chose it because CRO does lend itself better to e-commerce.
Yeah.
That is not to say that CRO is not just as effective for B2B, but it just looks a little bit different, which is a major misconception that CRO is not as much for B2B. That's so far from the truth. But yeah, it's passion, and just from a business perspective, it lends itself a little better to e-commerce.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when we started, we also went in with like, hey, we'll like this is a common problem we should solve for everyone. Everybody have a website, they have journeys, they have funnels. We should be able to solve for them. But we are also started to narrow it down as like at Fiber, we are realizing a lot of banking, financial services, like customers whose websites are very non-standard. Like D2C, the best part is a lot of brands are on, like not the larger ones, but a lot of brands are on Shopify, BigCommerce, etc. But if you go in like a somebody providing services like a solar water person or like a solar roofing person, plumbing, banking, insurance, these are like very weird websites. They have no idea on what the flow of the path is. So we started narrowing down there now. I call it my metrics is high LTV. If the customer is high LTV, go for it. Like that's what I'm trying to do it. We've not yet touched D2C. So I come from a D2C background. I did a brand on women's health before, and so I understand that. But yeah, no, this is awesome. Like how you end up in a space. By the way, my research says 80% of D2C brands all know what CRO is and actively looking. They call it like a funnel optimization, but this is what actually like they're looking for. But so yeah, so that's awesome. So Haley, talk to me. Like I know D2C is a great space to be in, but it's like a lot of volume play, right? A lot of D2C brands don't have budgets, right? And CRO being one of the lowest priority for them, over acquisition, how do you get in? Like, what do you talk to them? How do you reframe CRO, maybe like as a growth? Like, what do you do to get into the headspace of the CMO?
So one starting point is, I like to make this analogy in that an online website for DTC is it's your online store.
Mhm.
If you liken that to something tangible in real life, that is like having a brick and mortar retail store. So imagine you are paying to get people into your store. You're paying a lot probably to get people into your store, whether that be online or imagine the analogy of a brick and mortar store. These people come in, and what we're doing online is you are a virtual salesperson, essentially, like you have a salesperson in a store. And they're going to guide you around. They're going to give you a lovely experience. They're going to show you what you're looking for. It's all very intentional. So imagine you're getting all of these people to your store and you're not doing that and you don't have a salesperson. Like, well, welcome to our store. Help yourself. Let's say you have 10,000 people in your store and you just set them free. What a disaster. But you paid so much money to get them there. Why are you not going to have the salespeople that are trained and skilled so that out of these 10,000 people, you can get as many people as possible to check out, and not only check out, but check out with the biggest tickets possible? If you are only paying for traffic, you are missing half of the equation, arguably the more important half of that equation. And CRO, I say, always works. There are not many guarantees in CRO, but this is one of them. CRO will always work in some duration over time if it's done correctly. And that is, the machine never fails you. The CRO, the system never fails you. It is the humans running it. So this might be an argument where, AI is great as a tool now that we can use to help the humans and make less errors. So, not only are you cutting out half of the equation, you're cutting out the half that is guaranteed to make you more money. And with that said, then CRO ultimately pays for itself. You can't say that about paying for traffic. You can't say these things about SEO work. You can't say these things about brand work, especially in e-commerce. People have all kinds of attribution problems. CRO and testing in e-commerce is pretty straightforward. It's not perfect, and nothing is going to be perfect, but like out of everything else, it's one of the clearest, I would argue. And then so that's like a whole bucket that I just talked about is one way. But then the other conversation is, it's not just optimizing conversion rates. It is a philosophy for business decision making. So I've niched down on websites primarily, but in my career in its entirety, I have optimized all kinds of things. You can optimize and do CRO wherever you own a code base. So let's say you're an e-commerce brand, you have a website. Let's say you have a mobile app. We should optimize that as well. Let's say you're a SaaS company. You're going to have your marketing website and your SaaS platform. Like, you can optimize all things. I've even heard of fast food restaurants optimizing their kiosks in their brick and mortar locations. So really, if you think about CRO, it's not just like, oh, let's get some quick wins on our website. It's, no, you're making an intentional choice to use data to make decisions for the business, whether that be about the website, whether that be about SEO, email, SMS, like that. And then you can extrapolate that out further to other things. So like, really, CRO is a business-wide thing at the biggest end of the scale for it. But to scale it back, if we're just talking about the website, you're eliminating guesswork, which is kind of the villain here that we're tackling. And you're replacing guesswork with data and data-driven decision-making that then, again, will get you to a better place. Like, there is no way that it turns out poorly unless the humans running it and doing it fail you. So that, what other arguments do you need? Granted, it is difficult sometimes to get people, on board, but like, that's pretty freaking clear,
I know, but like, I know, like, one thing that I feel at times, and like, I debate a lot with my team: are we pushing a lot, or is there a pull? And sometimes, like, when you see Meta and like Google and like acquisition channels, there's a lot of pull. Like a new acquisition comes in. Like I don't know whether you have read this. Like Thread recently opened ads, and then now they have opened ads on statuses of WhatsApp, right? And people are saying, oh, this is going to reduce CAC significantly. All marketers are flocking into it. One thing that I think in CRO, it's still pushed because a lot of people don't understand it. And then once it's pushed, once they have a clarity, it's tough to get out of it. But the point is, how do you break in, right? And so that's what like I keep on understanding more from my peers. Say, hey, how do you break in? Like, and with that note, Haley, if you get into an account, what was the first 30-day looks for you? Like, what do you tell the customer that, hey, this is the 30-day process where we'll set up, get started with you, because there's no quick win in CRO. It's a process, right? So how do you convince them, like, hey, it will take this much duration, we'll set up this way? What's your process there?
So CRO has a lot of gray area, which is why it is so important to have the right experts properly trained with the right knowledge running it. And it's very case by case, but generally I try and break the misconception that you cannot get quick value, because there are some things that you can do most of the time to get some quick value. But like you alluded to, there is also a lot that you have to ramp up, and it is a process. So in the first 30 days, let's assume we're doing research and testing, because if you think about CRO, I say CRO is often very overcomplicated a lot, when it's really just two buckets of work that it breaks down into. CRO is just research and it's testing, and those two things are consistently playing with each other to get the outcomes that we want. So that said, then in the first 30 days, what can we do in the research bucket? What can we do in the testing bucket? What can we do quickly? And then what do we need to set up for the midterm and the long term? So first, in the research bucket, do you have any existing research that we can tap into, or some existing data collection that you haven't analyzed yet that we can tap into? What quick turnaround tests, maybe in a tool like Listna, can we launch and tap into? At the same time, we start research and data collection and setting that up, and even setting up the longer ones like collecting survey data and poll data and things. What tests can we get launched in the first week or two? Those are going to typically be smaller tests with the preface of, or the caveat of, these are primarily to get familiar with to get familiar with working with each other. And then ideally we get some wins, but we're starting the process, which is a win in itself. Yeah. And then after those, let's try and get some real tests once we have this process stuff hashed out. But it's setting up the two in parallel as quickly as you can with research and testing. And from the moment you kick off, trying to have as much prepared as you possibly can for a client to approve, review, look at, so that you can immediately start that data collection and the analysis, if you can, of some kind. But there is also the caveat of, I do say to clients, let's say we're setting up a big research initiative from the outset, and we're going to do 6 methodologies. So let's say we're going to do a survey, a poll, interviews, journey analysis, analytics, heuristics, and heat maps, whatever. You can keep going on, right? Because you want to have a bulk set of data as much as you can, yeah, as much as it makes sense up front to start informing tests. I will not deliver that piecemeal. So I'm not going to give you an analytics analysis as soon as it's done in week 2. I'm not going to then give you a heat map analysis when those are done in week 3, and then I'm not going to give you the survey data by itself in week 4, so on and so forth. I do say, if you work with me, it is mandatory that you wait a month to 2 months. 2 months on the long side is really the top end of that duration, but you have to wait a month or 2 until all of that data is done collecting, until it is analyzed, and then I will deliver it to you all at once, because the idea and part of doing so much upfront is being able to cross-reference things, cross-analyze things, and then, if you find an insight over here in a survey, do you find anything that echoes and relates to that in a heat map, and then an interview, and then the analytics data, and then the journey, or the user testing. So then you have more confidence in your insights as much as you can, because if you have an insight then that's backed up by 5 data points that you found across methodologies, that is a much stronger insight than one that's just backed up by one data point. Especially then if you really get into the nuance of behavioral versus perceptive data, quant versus qual data, different mixes of those backing up insights. And so there is that caveat. And then how that bigger initiative plays with some quick wins and some quick things that we can get, that's just case by case. And, if I can give you some quick wins in the meantime, which I try to do to like get a little bit, so you're not just like sitting there, I will, but I'm also not going to force it, because there has to be some understanding of the process and what it is, and, respecting that. So it's a balance, but does that help?
No, this helps. So I heard a lot around like being able to collect a lot of data, being able to collect and like there's always been a debate like how much of the qualitative data you should rely on, how much of the quantitative data you should rely on. Like how do you go about, because I know when somebody gets you on for CRO, there's always an expectation from the CRO expert that you will have certain tooling so that I can collect this data, right? Like how do you go about setting this expectation? Because a lot of times CMOs push back, hey, you are just setting cost for me. You came in like you are expensive, and then now you want a tool that's expensive, and then you want another tool that's another expensive. Like how do you go about managing that expectation with CMO when it comes to tooling in CRO and the service in CRO, and then eventually like the time in CRO that takes it to get to that level when we start showing any win, or like when we follow a process. What's the conversion looks like? How do you navigate that with them?
So I am very big on just being as transparent and upfront as possible. And a big part of one big reason why I wanted to work for myself and do something on my own is so that I could do that. I'm not
Yeah.
going to try and lie to you and scam you just to get you to buy something. I'm going to just be very honest. And then also like their part of it is a fit. So I'm not just going to take every client. I'm going to vet you. You're going to vet me. I'm going to give you all this information. And ultimately, like if you don't accept the process and what's required, then I'm going to tell you that and we're not a good fit and I'm not going to work with you. Like there are certain things that you have to have. There are certain ways we have to do things. So upfront, like I'm going to tell you, in the discovery, and then we do like an extensive scoping process, which this is also why I do custom scopes. I don't just have some kind of menu that you can pick off from sources, because it's very case to case. It is very custom, or it should be. And so I'm tool agnostic, Chirpy is tool agnostic. So if you come to me and you have tools, great, we're going to try and use those. Sorry, my dog's lunch timer just went off. We're going to try and use those, but if I don't think that they're the right fit for what we're trying to do, then I'll tell you that. And then I'm going to tell you what tools I'm going to want, or my team is going to want up front. And then we're going to try and get estimates for those tools, factor that in so that there are no surprises when we actually start doing the work. I don't want you to be surprised. I don't want to be surprised. I don't want to run into roadblocks. So really, it just starts up front. All of it starts up front. And then we wouldn't even reach a point in our work together where there would be an issue with a tool, because we would have handled it, if that makes sense. And like I said, like if there's not a willingness to have the tools that we need and to go through the processes that are required, like you're gonna have to go find somewhere else. I'm happy to try and send you some recommendations.
Perfect. No, this makes sense. Makes sense, Haley. Okay, cool. So I just want to like shift gears here. Like very, very high level from your point of view, what are you seeing a CRO trend that's been like huge buzz, but not enough benefit?
So I will say AI was obviously very hyped up. It still is. And I started from a place that was more resistant to AI, but now I'm much more on board with it. This is going somewhere related to your question, I promise. So it is very trendy. I would say one aspect of it was design. It's like, oh, it can help us with design. I don't think it's quite there yet. You very much still need humans and strategy for that. I'll say I'm not technical, like I'm not a developer. I don't have that background. That was one area that was also very hyped. I have heard pretty good feedback from people around its use for development, which is great. But I mean, I think it absolutely still needs human review. I think in research, it can be helpful, extremely helpful. I'm like, I think what you're working on is exciting because historically, like in CRO, there is a lot of manual work. So if we can help with some of that to not only make things more efficient, but to maybe help us think of different perspectives that we weren't thinking of and like expand our horizons or tap deeper into some things, like that's great. So I think like the hype of AI, just, in those examples and other ways, like is great. I think that it is a letdown in some ways. So it's like, how can we bridge the gap on some of that?
Yeah,
I think
makes
that
sense.
answers the question, right?
Yep. And
Okay.
so, like you've been working with DTC founders. I know you like at least your website or common knowledge out there talks about you work with like mid-market to like enterprise DTC founders. In case like when like just on a lot more DTC founders who are starting up or who are early in their journey, what's your and like they don't have big testing budget, they don't have like a possibility of CRO. What's like one playbook or one guidance you'll say, hey, this is what you should try at least on your website. Like this is what you should do till you become like mid-level and like, hire me. But like before that, what advice will you give them to do it on their website?
Start with as much data as you can, balance it with budget, resources, have a plan that makes sense for you. But I think that there's a misconception that data collection is very difficult, it's very expensive, it takes too long. That's not true. There are free tools out there you don't even have to pay for. AI is helpful, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, you type stuff in. You can do customer interviews or like interview people in your ICP. You can run things like free heat maps and session recordings once you do get your site live. If you take it all the way back, then let's say people don't even have their website live yet and they're
Yeah,
just starting and they know they want to build a website and they need to. A lot of people will just guess for the whole thing. They'll be like, this is kind of, this is what I want my messaging to be, this is what I want my positioning to be. Here's some imagery, and they do their best. I get it. Totally fine. I did that when I opened mine. There's like a lack of resources. But if you're able to, like, really, you can start even collecting data then. Like, I hope you collected data to find the product market fit, like, before that even. But this juncture is no different. So you can interview people in your ICP. You should, hopefully, based on the product, you're able to find that market, talk to them, and then have your positioning if you're not the first in the category and how you're going to differentiate yourself. And then you use that positioning, which there are frameworks for, and take the, maybe the interviews and take some of that information, roll that into your messaging, and then have that influence like the imagery and the videos, the copy elsewhere. And then from a design perspective, you can do competitor research, which is technically data collection. So what do all of your competitors' sites look like? How are you going to differentiate from that and stand out in your own way? What do their social accounts look like and their ads and their creative there? There's all kinds of things that you can do even really early that don't cost anything. But if you do have a small budget to spend some money, there are tools like Listna. I love Listna. I use it for so many things. I used it for my own stuff at Chirpy, where you can test pretty much anything. So let's say you were torn between two homepage designs. You can put that in there super cheap. You can order their testers based on even your demographics for your ICP and have them see the designs. Like, which one do you prefer?
yeah,
That data, then you have at least some signal to go off of on which homepage design is better. You can run headlines against each other. You can run images against each other. You can literally attest to everything. Like, you can get data behind dang near, I would say, everything.
yeah,
And so it's just a matter of like resources, budget, know-how. If you don't know how to do something, investigate it, talk to someone. People are willing to be helpful for free. Like, there's
yeah.
all kinds of things if you could be scrappy if you have to.
Awesome. Hey, this is very very actionable and useful advice, Haley. Thanks a lot for that. And lastly, Haley, like I know like a lot of my at least for this podcast, a lot of people are also like marketers, young marketers, right? Like where you started, right? So if they want to follow a path in conversion optimization, revenue optimization, like whatever we call it, what are like the core, like I know like blog headlines, etc., but what is that real deal they should go in, like what are the trenches they should get in, where do they go and learn, like what would be that according to you?
Oh, I love this question so much. So I'm very opinionated about this actually. And you need to work at least one agency,
Mhm.
and not just any agency. You should do your research. You should not only find specific companies that you want to work for, but you should be very curious about who you will be working with and
Mm.
under, because that is the most important part, I would say. Well, I guess frankly at any company and job, but especially if you're trying to come up in the ranks of CRO, because there are so many people, I will say, claiming to do it,
Yeah.
but there are only so many people doing it well. So it's not just that you get the training, it is where the training comes from and what the training is, because there are tons of people that have training and experience but have no idea what they're doing, or they're doing tons of things incorrectly, or they don't know what they don't know. So ask who am I going to report to, and then do research on that person. What's their experience? And if you're not sure who and what companies, like talk to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn in the industry that look like they know what they're doing and have been in it for a while. See if they'll talk to you and give you advice. I know I could do that. Like come ask me. But just like really try and be as diligent as you can, because that absolutely matters.
Yeah.
And as a former person who was very ambitious, strong-willed, confident, wanted to move quickly and up the ranks, I would say there is no way to choose the system and skip over any part of it. It can be frustrating, but it is worth it to like really, I don't want to say take your time, like just feel it out, but like really try and make sure that you get everything you can that you think makes sense out of each level of that ladder, because it's really important, and things in CRO really do build on each other.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have gaps within that journey, and man, it will pay off if you kind of stick through and work up. But like working under the right people and the right team really can just make, I don't want to say make or break, that sounds very harsh, but like it's very important. And so yeah, agency experience though, at least one, two, better, three, great. But if agency life's not for you and you work at one, get the experience, great. Like maybe try out an in-house team, try out SaaS, but like variety, I think in CRO, and breadth and depth in it are very important. Whereas I say, like when people ask me for hiring advice, like I don't hire people with just in-house experience only, because
Mm.
their knowledge is so limited, and it's just not extensive and deep enough or wide enough. So that would be my pro tip.
Awesome. Hey Haley, thanks a lot for this. Thanks for being here and talking to us. I
Thank you for
love.
having me. These were great questions. This was fun.
Awesome. Hey, Haley, thanks a lot. I know we are on time as well. I think it's just ended well.